I found my granddaughter living under a bridge in Savannah, barefoot and starving, clutching a broken doll with one eye missing. 3 years ago, my daughter-in-law Christine told me they were moving to Australia and would never return after our terrible fight. I believed her. I lived with that pain every single day, thinking I'd lost my son and granddaughter forever. But there she was, that little girl with hollow eyes, picking up a discarded cookie from the ground like it was treasure. When she looked up at me, I saw it. That tiny mole on her right eyelid, exactly like my son David's. My heart stopped. And then she whispered the words that shattered my world. "Grandma, is that really you?" I wanted to run. I wanted to pretend this wasn't happening. But when I found David moments later, digging through garbage under that bridge, skin and bones in torn clothes, I knew the nightmare was real. My daughter-in-law had lied about everything. And what she did to my family was far worse than I could have ever imagined. I arrived in Savannah on a quiet afternoon, with sunshine filtering through the old oak trees draped in Spanish moss. The hotel room was small but had a balcony overlooking streets filled with tourists and street performers. I told myself this trip was for healing, to escape the suffocating silence of my Chicago home, where memories of David and Emma haunted every corner. For 3 years, I believed they were living comfortably in Australia, building a new life without me. Christine's final text message was burned into my memory. "Don't contact us anymore. David says he doesn't want a mother like you. Forget us." Those words had crushed me, but I accepted them as punishment for whatever I'd done wrong. I took my purse and wandered downtown to a square with a stone fountain and tourists taking photos. A mime performed nearby, making children laugh. I sat on a cool bench, watching unfamiliar faces, searching for some small joy to ease my loneliness. Then my eyes caught something that made my breath stop. In the shadow behind the fountain, a little girl sat curled up, hugging a battered rag doll with only one button eye. She was painfully thin, her feet bare and dusty, her hair matted with dirt and sweat. She wasn't begging like other street children. She just sat there silent, watching people pass with enormous sad eyes that seemed far too old for her small face. Something about her posture, the way she held that doll so protectively, squeezed my heart. A couple walked past, and the woman accidentally dropped a piece of cookie. The girl's eyes lit up briefly, filled with desperate hunger, but also shame. She hesitated for a long moment, glancing around as if afraid someone would scold her, then slowly crawled forward, picked up the cookie, carefully brushed off the dirt, and tucked it into the torn pocket of her coat. That gesture pierced my chest like a needle. I couldn't bear it. I threw away the ice cream I'd been eating and hurried to a nearby bakery. I bought 2 warm croissants and a small carton of chocolate milk, then returned to the square. I knelt down beside her, softening my voice. "Here you go, sweetheart." She flinched, lifted her head slowly, and looked at me with large, dark eyes full of mistrust, like a frightened animal. I smiled gently and pushed the bag toward her. But when her gaze met mine fully, time seemed to freeze. On her right eyelid, there was a tiny mole, so small you had to look closely to notice it. That mole was identical to David's, my son. The air felt stuck in my throat, as if someone was squeezing my chest. My granddaughter was supposed to be in Australia, living comfortably with her parents. I repeated that to myself like a desperate prayer, but my hands trembled as I offered her the bag again. The girl hesitated, then reached out with her thin, cold fingers to take it. Her small hand touched mine, and she whispered something that made my entire world collapse. "Grandma, is that really you?" Her voice was weak and trembling, but so achingly clear I couldn't pretend I'd misheard. I snatched my hand back as if burned, my heart pounding violently. I stood up immediately, took a step back, and forced an awkward smile. "You're mistaken, little one. My granddaughter is in Australia with her parents." I didn't dare look into her eyes anymore. That look, so sad yet so full of fragile hope, seemed to beg me not to abandon her. I turned and walked quickly away, trying to escape the crushing feeling in my chest. I kept telling myself it couldn't possibly be Emma. How could it be? But her weak voice haunted me, echoing behind me. "Grandma, don't go. Grandma, please." I heard her hurried little footsteps, the sound of her worn sandals slapping the pavement. She was running after me, her voice broken by sobs that tore at my soul. I stopped in a narrow alley, my heart in knots. Emma was clinging to the hem of my blouse, afraid I would vanish if she let go. Tears rolled down her dirty face. But she wasn't crying loudly, just sobbing softly with a voice that trembled. "You really don't recognize me, Grandma." "It's me." The pain in my chest was unbearable, as if someone was twisting my heart. I finally sighed and sat down on the cold stone step of a closed shop. I looked at her, trying to keep my voice gentle. "It's okay, sweetheart. Tell me, why are you here alone? Where are your parents?" Emma shook her head, her small hand gripping mine tightly, terrified I would leave. Tears welled up again as she said in a weak voice, "If you don't believe me, I'll take you to see my dad. When you see him, you'll believe me." Part of me wanted to run, to go back to the hotel and pretend this never happened. But that girl's look, a desperate mix of hope and fear, held me there like an invisible rope. I nodded and let her lead me. Her hand was icy cold, so thin I could feel every fragile bone. She led me away from the tourist streets, full of laughter and music. We turned onto a narrow dirt path beside a river that flowed lazily through the city. The smell of dampness and rotting garbage made me frown, but Emma didn't seem to notice. She walked faster, glancing back nervously, as if afraid I'd change my mind. The path led us under an old concrete bridge where sunlight disappeared into heavy shadows. The air was damp and cold. I saw cardboard boxes spread on dirty ground, a ragged blanket, empty plastic bottles, and a small, extinguished fire pit. This wasn't a place to live, much less for a child. My heart sank. But before I could speak, Emma let go of my hand and ran ahead. "Dad, look who I brought." Her nervous voice rang out. A man with his back to us was digging through a pile of scrap metal. He wore a torn jacket, his thin hands picking out cans and bottles to put in a large sack. When he heard her, he grunted in a hoarse voice. "Emma, I've told you 1,000 times not to bother people." He didn't turn around immediately. He slowly straightened up, wiped his filthy hands on his worn jeans, and finally turned. In that moment, time stopped. Even though his hair was matted and tangled, even though a thick, neglected beard covered most of his face, even though his body was so thin it looked like just skin stretched over bones, I recognized him instantly. It was David, my only son. My purse fell to the ground with a heavy thud. I stood frozen, unable to say a word. My mouth went completely dry. My head spun violently. This couldn't be my David, my strong, energetic son, who used to laugh so loudly in my kitchen when I made his favorite chili. But those eyes, exhausted and bloodshot, were still my son's eyes. David saw me, and I clearly watched the color drain from his gaunt face. First came surprise, as if he couldn't believe I was really there, then fear, and finally crushing shame. He quickly pushed Emma behind him protectively. He lowered his head and muttered almost in a whisper, "I'm sorry. We don't have anything to give you. Please leave." I knew instantly he was pretending not to recognize me. He didn't want me to see him like this, ragged and dirty, living under a bridge like a homeless vagrant. But I couldn't let him push me away again. I took a step forward, ignoring the damp earth under my feet. My legs shook violently, but I couldn't stop. I raised my hand, wanting to touch his face to prove this wasn't a nightmare, but my hand stayed suspended in the air, not daring to actually touch him. My voice broke, full of unbearable pain. "David, what happened to you, son?" I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. For 3 years, I lived with the agony of losing him, and now he was in front of me, but in this devastating state. I didn't understand. I couldn't comprehend how everything had become so terrible. Hearing his name seemed to shatter him completely. The wall he'd tried to build crumbled entirely. He raised his head, his red eyes brimming with tears. He sank to his knees on the ground, buried his face in his hands, and in a voice choked with sobs said, "Mom, I'm sorry. It's all my fault." His suppressed cry echoed under the silent bridge. Emma, frightened, looked at him, and then at me. She ran to him, hugged his shoulder, and said in a trembling voice, "Dad, don't cry. Please don't cry. Grandma is here. She's going to help us, right, Grandma?" I took them both to the bus station, bought 3 tickets to Chicago, and chose seats at the back where they could sit together, away from curious stares. When the bus started moving, Emma rested her head on my lap, her tired eyes closing, her little hand never letting go of my fingers. David sat beside me, staring silently out the window at the passing streetlights, illuminating his hollow face. In the quiet darkness of the night trip, David began to speak, in a voice heavy with effort. "The first few days were the worst, Mom. I had no documents. Christine took everything, my identification, family records, even Emma's birth certificate. I couldn't rent a room or get any decent work." My heart ached as I listened, imagining my son wandering helpless without a single paper to prove who he was. "What did you do to survive?" I asked, my voice shaky. David took a deep breath. "I went to construction sites begging for work as a helper, but foremen just waved me away. Without papers, no one wanted problems. That first night, Emma and I slept on a park bench. It was freezing cold. She hugged her doll, shaking uncontrollably. At midnight, it started raining. I had to carry her and run to shelter under a closed storefront. She cried, calling for her mother, and I felt completely helpless." His voice cracked. "Why didn't you call me, David?" I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I wanted to, Mom. I found a coin in the trash once and stood in front of a payphone for a long time, the coin shaking in my hand. But then the words I said that day came back. Even if I starve, I'll never come back to you." My stupid pride and shame stopped me. "I was afraid you'd look at me with disappointment, that you'd see me as a complete failure." I squeezed his scarred hand tightly. "I would never do that. You're my son, David. No matter what happens, I'll always love you." When we arrived home in Chicago at dawn, I opened the gate and took his hand firmly. "This is your house, David. It always will be." The familiar smell of flour and sugar from the small bakery workshop welcomed us like a warm embrace. I prepared hot baths, found clean clothes, and cooked a big pot of chili just like the old days. Emma ate 2 full bowls, her eyes sparkling with joy. "Grandma, this is so delicious. I've never tasted anything so good." David worked tirelessly in the workshop, sweeping floors and carrying supplies as if trying to redeem himself through physical labor. I enrolled Emma in a nearby elementary school where she quickly caught up with her classmates. Her laughter brought light back into our home, dispelling 3 years of suffocating silence. David created a simple website for our bakery, took photos of freshly made sweets, and shared our family story on social media. Orders started pouring in. He designed new packaging, contacted delivery services, and expanded our business to other states. The workshop was full of life again, phones ringing constantly with new orders. One late night, I found him packing the last orders, sweat on his forehead but a spark of life in his eyes. I made him hot chocolate and put it on the table. "Rest a bit, son." He looked up at me. "Mom, I don't know how to thank you. If it weren't for you, Emma and I would be." His voice broke. I put my hand on his shoulder and smiled. "You don't need to say anything. Having you and Emma here with me is enough." Our life slowly returned to normal. The bakery thrived so much that a company in Canada contacted us about importing our products. But one sunny afternoon, a taxi stopped in front of our gate. A woman stepped out, dressed in a tight dress and dark sunglasses covering most of her face. David, carrying a box to the truck, froze completely. Emma looked up with wide, frightened eyes. The woman slowly removed her sunglasses, revealing a face I could never forget. Christine, the ghost of our past, had returned with that icy, calculated smile I knew would bring a terrible new storm. The workshop fell silent as everyone turned toward the entrance. Christine stood there with her perfect actress smile, cold and calculating. My first instinct was to step in front of Emma protectively. David moved immediately, placing himself between Christine and our granddaughter, his body tense like a coiled spring. Emma huddled behind her father, gripping his shirt tightly. "Dad, who is she?" the girl whispered, confused and afraid. Christine's voice dripped with fake sweetness. "Emma, sweetheart, come to Mommy. I've missed you so much." She knelt and opened her arms with theatrical tears in her eyes. But Emma backed, away, pressing closer to David, her eyes wide with instinctive fear. I stepped forward, my voice cold as ice. "You're not welcome here, Christine. Leave now." I tried to stay calm, but rage burned inside me like fire. This woman had destroyed my son, stolen everything from him, and abandoned them both at their lowest point. David's voice was firm and sharp. "What do you want, Christine? Haven't you caused us enough suffering already?" Christine stood up, dusted off her expensive dress, and her smile faded into something darker. "I just want to make things right, David. I want to give Emma a complete family. I made mistakes, but now I want to start over." I laughed bitterly, unable to hide my contempt. "A complete family? You abandoned your daughter at an airport and let her live under a bridge for 3 years. Get out of here right now." My voice echoed sharper than intended. Christine's fake warmth vanished completely. Her voice turned ice cold. "Very well, Margaret. If you want to, talk straight, I will. I'm back to fight for custody of Emma." She paused, pointing at the bustling bakery. "And this place should be half mine. Did you forget we were once married, David?" David almost lunged at her, fists clenched, face red with fury. "You have no right." But I grabbed his hand, stopping him. I knew Christine was trying to provoke us into losing control. I looked at her steadily, my voice calm but deadly firm. "You won't get a single dollar. And you won't get near my granddaughter. Now leave before I call the police." Christine let out a shrill, mocking laugh. "Let's see what an old woman like you can do. Just wait for the court summons. Emma is my daughter, and I'm going to get back what's mine." She turned, put on her sunglasses, got into the taxi, and disappeared, leaving oppressive silence behind. Days later, a vicious campaign began destroying our reputation online. Fake accounts posted lies claiming our sweets caused food poisoning. A viral video showed a crying woman beside a supposedly poisoned child with our product box prominently displayed. Partner stores canceled contracts. Our Canadian export deal was suspended. The phone rang constantly with angry insults and threats. Neighbors who once praised us now avoided eye contact. Rotten eggs were thrown at our door. Emma came home from school crying because classmates said our candy made people sick. The workshop that had been full of life became silent and cold again. One night, I found David sitting alone, surrounded by unpacked boxes, head on the table in despair. "Mom, maybe we should close the bakery. I'll give her half," like she asked. "I don't want you or Emma suffering because of this." I sat down, took his hands firmly, and looked into his eyes. "Listen to me, David. We did nothing wrong. This bakery is our family's soul. I will not let that demon destroy it, nor will I let her near Emma. I'd rather fight to the end than surrender." I opened my late husband's old chest and found a worn contact book. I called Robert, a retired investigator who'd helped our family years ago. "Robert, it's me. Margaret. I need your help. My family is in serious trouble." The next morning, Robert arrived with lawyer Lucy Herrera, a sharp, intelligent woman with a confident presence. We told them everything. Robert discovered all the attacking social media accounts were fake, created less than a month ago, operating from the same locations in Savannah. Security footage showed Christine using computers at an internet cafe exactly when the posts were made. The hospital confirmed the child in the viral video had an asthma attack, not food poisoning. The mother admitted being paid by Christine to stage the scene. Lucy and I went to the courthouse and after hours of searching found the divorce file. On the last page was a voluntary declaration signed by Christine herself. "I, Christine Walker, after receiving all assets from Mr. David Patterson, commit to never again request, support, claim any right to Mr. Patterson's future assets." Christine had signed away her rights to protect herself, but now it became the evidence that condemned her. Robert also discovered Christine had lost all her money in failed cryptocurrency investments overseas and was drowning in debt. She'd read about our bakery's success online and returned purely out of greed, not love. The trial day arrived. The courthouse was packed with journalists Christine had invited, clearly expecting to humiliate us publicly. Christine's lawyer painted her as an abused victim, calling witnesses who sobbed about poisoned children. But when our turn came, Lucy calmly presented every piece of evidence. Food safety certificates proving our bakery's spotless record. Hospital documents showing the child had asthma, not poisoning. Financial records of Christine paying the fake witness. Security footage of Christine creating the smear campaign. And finally, the signed agreement where Christine voluntarily waived all rights to David's future assets. The judge's gavel struck. The defendant's demands are rejected. Furthermore, there are clear indications of defamation and intentional damages. Christine's face went pale. She tried to cover her face and fled the courtroom as reporters swarmed her. Outside, neighbors who'd abandoned us waited, including Mrs. Mary, who took my hands with tears. "Margaret, forgive us. We were foolish to believe those lies." I smiled and shook my head. "It's over now. Thank you for coming." When we got home, Emma ran to us, hugging our legs and laughing. "Grandma, Dad, my teacher praised my essay about our family today." I lifted her into my arms, feeling her strong little heartbeat. David hugged me, his voice choked with emotion. "Mom, thank you. If it weren't for you." I patted his back gently. "We're family, David. I'll always be here for you." Sunlight filled our yard, making the freshly baked sweets in the workshop sparkle like gold. After everything we endured, I understood that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, but freeing your heart from hatred and pain. Life can take everything from us, money, reputation, even faith. But if we hold on to love and kindness, we can always start over. I learned that sometimes pain is life's way of teaching us to distinguish between the false and the true, between those who come to hurt us and those who stay to heal us. I no longer blame Christine, nor do I hold resentment for the past, because it was precisely those wounds that made me stronger, able to protect my son and granddaughter. If there's one thing I want to say to those who feel lost amid suffering and loss, it's this: never believe everything is over. Sometimes it's in the ruins that we find the way back home. If this story touched your heart, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in my place? Would you have had the courage to fight back? Share your story with me, and don't forget to subscribe for more true stories about family, courage, and redemption. Thank you for staying with me until the very end.